Now that the dust has finally started to settle after Trump's headline-grabbing trip through the Middle East, but not Israel, we can finally ask, did Trump indeed turn his back on Israel? Hi, I'm Hanan Lischinsky. Thank you for joining us again for this All Israel News update, where today we'll try to kind of sum up the past week, all of the developments we saw, especially regarding US President Donald Trump's trip here in the Middle East, where he pointedly did not stay in Israel, did not visit Israel, which led to all kinds of reports and speculations that he might have turned his back on Israel and would now pursue a policy that is not supportive of Israel. We'll try to get into these questions, try to answer them as much as we can, but if we're just going to have the conclusion before the whole video, in my opinion, Trump did not turn his back on Israel. However, he does pursue America's interest first, which is what he has always said he would do. Now, all of this started a couple of weeks back when we started to hear reports that after the very warm visits by Netanyahu, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, to the White House, some very warm meetings between the two, there started to be reports of increasing tensions, interpersonal tensions, that Trump was losing his patience with Netanyahu about the war dragging on and so forth. And in the wake of all of these reports, we started seeing US moves that were not exactly aligned with Israeli interests in the region. For one, maybe the most important of all of these things is, of course, the nuclear talks with Iran. Israel, of course, wants to end the Iranian nuclear program one way or another. Trump started out saying the same, but then he and his special envoy, Steve Witkoff, started waffling about maybe uranium enrichment could continue in Iran, maybe there would be a civilian nuclear program in Iran. Then they said different things. And that was one of the major red flags here in Israel, that the US might agree to a deal that would in effect prevent Israel from taking action, military action, against the Iranian nuclear program. Then, in another shocking twist, the US announced the stop of its military operation against the Houthis in Yemen in a separate agreement. Apparently Israel was not informed of this beforehand. The US just declared that the military offensive, the massive airstrikes that went on for, I think, over a month and were conducted daily, on a daily basis, would just be stopped. There was a separate agreement with the Houthis, and neither Israel nor, by the way, the United Kingdom, which also took part in these attacks, were informed. Again, more red flags seen from Israel, of course, especially since the Houthis explicitly said that they would not stop attacking Israel, and have indeed since that time attacked Israel with ballistic missiles and with drones several times, including in recent days. Then, of course, Trump came to the Middle East, and instead of visiting Israel, as many would have expected, and which was one of the first things he did in his first term as president, Trump spent a week in the Middle East, but only visited Saudi Arabia, Qatar, and then the United Arab Emirates. Now, the US explicitly said that this wasn't meant as a snub at Israel, but there wasn't really a good explanation for why Israel was skipped over during this visit. We'll try to tease out some of the possible reasons later on. But then during the meetings in Saudi Arabia, Trump actually at first declared that he would lift sanctions, remaining US sanctions against Syria, and then even met Syrian President, Ahmed al-Shara, met with him personally, and Trump over the next couple of days kept on gushing about what a great guy, such an attractive guy, he said al-Shara was, and even called him a tough guy, a fighter, without, of course, mentioning that this tough guy was indeed fighting against the US some of the time, was responsible or involved in attacks against US soldiers, US military in Iraq and then in Syria. And all of this amid strong vocal opposition of Israel, which is afraid that this former Islamist president, who now also leads the government in Syria, could turn out to be a huge enemy of Israel right on its northeastern border. So another point that raised red flags here in Israel. And then, of course, there's the whole Gaza issue. Now, last week there was, again, a surprise announcement by the US, a separate deal again between the US and Hamas, which freed IDF soldier and dual US-Israeli citizen Idan Alexander. Again, it seems that Israel was not really informed, not really kept in the loop, and then was somewhat surprised when the announcement was made. Of course, we were all positively surprised. We were all very happy that Alexander would be released. But again, something that was concerning for Israel. And now, since then, the US has apparently raised the pressure, not just on Hamas, as it had been until now, but on Israel to agree to a ceasefire. There have been more proposed outlines for a ceasefire by Special Envoy Witkoff. And this just happened yesterday evening, so we're filming this on Monday morning. So on Sunday evening, Netanyahu all of a sudden announced that the humanitarian aid, which had been stopped for 2 months, would be resumed. Deliveries would be resumed into the Gaza Strip, and he explicitly mentioned US pressure. He mentioned Republican and Democrat senators approaching him, messaging him, asking him to resume the aid into the Gaza Strip and prevent possible starvation in the enclave. There are 2 million peoples there. And of course, all of this happened amid rising pressure, not just from European states, not just from the US, but of course all of the international aid organizations in the UN have been clamoring about a claimed starvation, that we can say as of now there is no widespread starvation in the Gaza Strip, but this is what they said, and the pressure mounted to the point where Prime Minister Netanyahu yesterday announced the resumption of aid into Gaza. Now, all of the points I just raised might be used, could be seen as arguments of a deterioration in the relations between the US and Israel. And I will continue by addressing all of these points shortly and try to explain why I don't think that there's a large, a deep kind of a fissure between the two governments at the moment. But I just want to mention, there are, of course, these reports about interpersonal problems between Trump and Netanyahu. And I just want to mention that we can't really be sure. I'm working in the media. Outrage News is a media organization. But I just have to acknowledge that these kind of reports can often not be verified if it's Reuters reporting something or some other news organization. We simply do not know what the state of relations is between Trump and Netanyahu. And if there is a significant deterioration in relations, that might be something significant. That might be something that will really hurt Israel going forward, but we just don't know. So let's go over again all of the concerns that are raised, and I'll get into why I don't think they are concerning as of now and as far as we can know at this point. So in my personal opinion, my personal explanation of what's going on is 2 points. 2 points that we saw the Trump administration, where we saw the Trump administration behave in similar ways on different subjects, on different in their relations with different countries, and that is a lack of patience and America's interest first. That is, of course, the whole slogan, the whole motto of the Make America Great Again, America First. So that should not be a surprise at all, really, if you observe what the Trump administration is doing around the world, not just with Israel. So on the point of losing patience, and that, by the way, is something that I think you can observe as well on the Ukraine front regarding the Trump administration. When it comes to Iran, Trump has dealt with Iran for over a decade now. In his first term, he instituted the maximum pressure policy, and it seems that Trump really wants to bring this to an end. He said as much during his Gulf visit. He said Iran has to make a decision fast. There is no time. This must be resolved quickly, and that is why he's pushing ahead with all of these statements, all of the policies. Some of that will come out as unclear, but for now we seem to have a strict line where Iran will not have a nuclear weapon and will not have uranium enrichment. And that, in my opinion, explains part of what we've seen regarding Iran. The same, in my view, is true for Yemen and the Houthis. Yes, there was a lack of communication. That is another kind of thing that we've seen with the Trump administration on different fronts, not just with Israel. But with the Houthis, it appears that the Trump administration set the goal of ending their attacks on shipping. They declared that they would end their attack on shipping, and that was enough for the US for now. And the US, remember, does continue to support Israel with weapons. It continues to support Israeli airstrikes against the Houthis in Yemen, and that is enough for the Trump administration at the moment. And again, loss of patience. I think the Gaza thing has gone on long enough for Trump. He declared a couple of months back that the gates of hell would be loosed, would be opened, whatever, if Hamas wouldn't release all the hostages. Nothing happened. Again, lack of communication in my view. Trump just wrote this on Twitter without communicating with Netanyahu, and Israel was in a completely different timeline at the moment. There were negotiations going on. Israel does not have the type of army that you can just throw into Gaza if when Trump says so, and to open the gates of hell. That is not something that was ever going to happen, especially at that moment with Israel. And again, since then, months have gone by. From the view of Trump, nothing seems to have happened. Now Israel is again readying a large-scale offensive to go into the Gaza Strip. And it seems, in my view, Trump has lost patience. He's lost maybe interest in the whole thing. He wants to end the negative headlines, the negative press that surrounds this whole issue. And he wants to end this Gaza conflict, which is something that he has announced at the start of his term as president, that he wants to end it quickly. So that is one of the main points for this issue, in my view. So the second point that I mentioned, I think it's just about America's interests first. Not only, but first. The Trump administration has been constant in allowing Israel more or less to do what it wants to do, if it's Gaza, if it's Iran, if it's the Houthis. But America, the Trump administration, will pursue America's interest first. That is true with Iran, where US interest is mainly that Iran will not have nuclear weapons, and the uranium enrichment and a possible program might not be as big a concern for the US as it is for Israel. Same with the Houthis. US interest is to guarantee free shipping and let Israel take care of attacks against itself. There is no US interest from that point of view in completely eradicating the Houthis, which is something that is anyway extremely hard to do. If we're thinking about why Trump didn't stop here in Israel but spent so much time in the Gulf, now, again, after the dust has settled, we can see that Trump returned to the US with pledges of investments of totaling up to $1 trillion, over $1 trillion possibly, all kinds of investment deals, all kinds of arms deals. And if we're being honest, Israel just can't offer something like that. Netanyahu was in the White House already twice. It seems that behind the scenes, on all levels, the cooperation between the US, between the Trump administration and the Israeli government continued. But for now, it wasn't apparently in the US interest to come here to Israel. And it really seems as if Trump really wants to get something tangible out of every interaction he has with any country, be it the Gulf, Ukraine, whatever. Israel just cannot offer something in something similar for now, and that seems to be a good reason, a probable reason why Trump skipped Israel during this visit. If we're thinking about Syria, again, US interest first. The US still has soldiers in northeast Syria. Trump has already started drawing down, pulling out these soldiers. And if there is a chance that this former terrorist really changed his heart or whatever, will really turn a new page in Syria, try to bring stability, that is, of course, in the US interest, so it can pull out the troops. Something else that I think is maybe the most significant point for Syria is that Syria at the moment is completely destroyed and everything will have to be rebuilt. That is military, that is all of the infrastructures, water, electricity, you name it, the whole country, housing, the whole country is completely destroyed. And that gives the rare opportunity to really realign the country geostrategically. the power that will take over reconstruction of Syria will be the dominant power in Syria for the coming decades. So that means that if Syria, for example, would turn to China and Russia to rebuild their infrastructure and their military, Syria would probably be in their power block for the next couple of decades. Now that the US really has pulled all of the sanctions, this opens the door for Western companies to come in, European companies, but also, of course, US companies to come in, sign all of those huge deals, and really start reconstructing Syria, and through that, pulling it into the camp of Saudi Arabia, of the UAE, even Qatar, all of whom are aligned with the US and are close US allies. And if this can be achieved, here in Israel we're still very cautious, very skeptical, but if this can be achieved, this will be good for the US, and it might also be good for Israel in the long run. And finally, we're back to Gaza. I already talked about Gaza on the no patience, point of no patience. Again, I think American interests, yes, of course, the friendship with Israel, the alliance with Israel is a US interest in itself. But of course, Trump looks at this and thinks there is nothing great coming out of it. Again, it appears the reconstruction effort is something that interests him. He wants, probably together with the Gulf countries, take part in the reconstruction of Gaza, and that would be something that where US companies could really get something out of. But again, as I mentioned earlier, US interest is also to stop the bad press, to stop attacks on the US and on Israel as well, over the Gaza war, over the claims of starvation, all of the bad press, all of the ugly pictures that we see coming out of the Gaza Strip. An end to this, and of course ending the Gaza war, and potentially with a view toward a broader agreement with Saudi Arabia, with other Abraham Accords countries, Syria, of course, as well. There was talks about a possible Abraham Accords agreement. All of these would be huge achievements for the US, and that is, or that seems to be the first interest, the main interest that the Trump administration sees there, and that is why it's pressuring Israel at the moment. And not, again, to sum up all of this, it seems to me as if this is really an interest-based policy and not based on a deterioration of relations with Israel or with Netanyahu, as far as we can tell. So wrapping up, I just want to reiterate, US support continues much stronger. Weapons sales, weapon support continues. There's close cooperations across different levels, military, political, and so on. It just seems to me that at the moment, the Trump administration has determined what America's interests are, and they might diverge from Israel, but as US Ambassador Huckabee has also repeated several times, Israel is its own country, and the US will allow Israel, a sovereign country, to do what it wants, what it needs to do, and the US will pursue its interests as well. So once again, I'm saying this every week, it's just something new is happening every day. These are really interesting times here in the Middle East, especially here in Israel. Please visit us on allisrael.com, visit our social media channels to keep updated on the latest, all of the events, the latest happenings here in the Middle East. And leave a like if you like this video, and come back for our next All Israel News update.